If you have ever looked at a ThoughtSpot chart and wondered how this works, then this video is for you. We are going to talk about Muse Studio, a visualization engine that is powering everything inside ThoughtSpot. Not just theory, but we'll be talking about bullet charts, shared access charts, and a lot more in this session. But why in the first place you should know this? Once you understand the fundamentals, rows, columns, layers, you unlock a new level of customizations. You are not building charts, but exactly what your customers would need. Apart from that, we'll be exploring APIs for number formatting, date formatting, and a lot more in this session. If you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more such amazing videos coming ahead. Now, without any further ado, let's get started.
So Muse is essentially a toolbox for you to create different kind of visualizations. Today, like there are n number of charting libraries out there, high chart, there's name, like there are multiple things. So why Muse and what makes it a bit different? So Muse follows a very different philosophy in data visualization. It approaches data visualization in a data first manner rather than the chart first manner, like the usual library does. Like any library you go, you first define, I want a line chart, I want a bar chart, or something like that. But in Muse the paradigm is different. You put in your data. Muse by default would give you some of the default charts that it thinks what suits best on the data that you have given, and then you can start your analysis and exploratory from you. So so like I said, the Muse is basically a toolbox for you to start from your data and then arrive at an insight that you want to actually arrive, rather than first do all your analysis in some XYZ tool and then come and then just publish your chart. So that's the fundamental and like a difference, how Muse approaches data visualization. Muse is based on a famous paper published few years ago. It's on grammar of graphics. So like every language is based on a grammar, and those grammar form sentences, form paragraphs, different kinds of words. They have nouns, pronouns, and all the stuff that actually helps them to communicate with each other and better. Similarly, Muse follows this grammar of graphics. So it is basically a philosophy or a paper that describes how we can use different things of a data and convert it to a visual paradigm, like your things like the grammar describes some things like encoding. It can be positional encoding, color encoding, etc. So positional encoding would describe your axes. Color encoding would describe your different kinds, how you want to break your data and all the stuff. So that in a very snapshot or a very high level view, that's a intro on Muse.
Muse is essentially a new way, or like a different way to create your charts, right? Like Ujjwal alluded to. Um, like most charting libraries in JavaScript forces you into sort of a trade, right? You either go really low level and you end up building sort of a mini chart engine by yourself for like each kind of chart that you need, or you go like really high level and then you hit a wall whenever you need to, compose various features of a chart together. Like, you need like a bit of a line chart and a bit of a column chart, or you want to like
Anush, just to
customize.
interrupt you, you're not able to
Yeah,
see your screen if at all you're presenting something.
yeah, I will come back to the screen share. I just disabled it because it was taking away from,
Okay,
that's
sure.
uh but yeah. Right. So, but then you hit a wall whenever you need some, composition, or you need like customization of some specific things, right? Uh, so Muse is built on the concept of something known as the grammar of graphics. So the way Muse is different is that it follows a specific kind of a grammar, basically, right? And the kind of grammar that it follows is a grammar of graphics, right? It's like analogous to like the grammar of languages, like English or whatever other language that has its own grammar. Graphics also sort of has its own defined grammar, right? And just like a grammar gives us primitives, right, to build more complex things out of simpler entities, right? And that's what I'm referring to as a primitive over here. A grammar of graphics, similarly, gives us the primitives to build more complex visualizations, right? By composing different graphical entities together, you can say. Just like, in English, we might compose, verbs and adjectives and words and sentences to build like, paragraphs and um, chapters and ideas and concepts and philosophies and so on. So what do we mean by the primitives of graphics though, right? Especially when it comes to visualizations. We are primarily talking about the data. We are primarily talking about the marks, obviously. The marks is what is used to represent the data, like, bar or area, etc. And we're talking about encodings, right? Uh, so I'll come to the encoding bit in a second. But when we talk about data, our data is typically in some ordinal data. It is some kind of nominal data, or it's some temporal data. Or in ThoughtSpot parlance, they're often called attributes, they're called measures, and they're called dates, right? These are the three primary kinds of fields of data that we use. Now coming to marks, marks would be, like I said, like they could be like the usual marks that you see, bars and points and areas and lines. Or they can be something a little bit more exotic as well, in the sense of arcs, which could be used to build something like a donut or a pie chart in libraries that you might be familiar with. Tick marks are also a bit of a more exotic mark. So it's essentially a very simple thing, is just a line. But you will see later in the session like how that can be used in a very nice way. And now encodings. So encodings are basically the entities of a visualization that people know, right? So like, for example, every kind of a Cartesian chart would be built on some kind of an axis, right? You can think, and like every chart obviously has some kind of color on it, right? Like nobody likes looking at a black and white chart. And even if they did, black and white are also colors. So colors are what we call encodings, right? Texts, right? In data labels, axis labels that we see on a chart, that's something that we call an encoding. We also refer to encoding as a detail, which is basically breaking down one graphical entity into multiple subparts, right? So for example, like let's say we have a bar mark, for example, and we want to show more detailed view of the data that the bar represents, right? We would use something called a detailed encoding in Muse for that. Shapes, for example, like let's say we have a scatter plot, you want to show like stars and crosses and dots and triangles and squares. So those are, again, shape encodings. And of course, sizes, like you might want to show, like, for example, there's a chart called bubble charts, right? Where the size of the bubbles, right, or the circles on the chart, it varies with the data. Or it could be something like a Pareto chart. That's also a little bit of an exotic chart. But in a Pareto chart, the widths of the bars in the chart, that varies with the data. So to create this like varying sizes of marks, you'd use something called a size encoding. And there are more encodings as well. We have extensive documentation for these things. So I won't go into everything in full detail. But an important thing to remember is that marks dictate the behavior of encodings. Like different marks accept different encodings and they modify themselves differently. Like for example, if you applied a size encoding on a line mark and you apply a size encoding on a bar mark, like these two marks are going to behave slightly differently due to the nature of them being like, different entities entirely.
Here, actually, I have some fields selected here on the search bar. Yeah. And from the chart list, I have just selected, Muse Studio. So by default, it will create a, bar chart, and it will have a kind of sample code to generate the same bar chart. And it has some API like rows, columns, data, and then mount this API. So when you're talking about rows will be like whatever fields will be shown on the left side, or you can say y-axis. And whatever fields are in the columns, that will be on the x-axis or on the bottom side, you can say. So let's say for this one, if we add another measure, then what will happen? So let's use total profit, and then we'll have a multivariate chart, and each measure will have its own bar. But what if we want to like render line and bar for two different measure fields? Then we can use the layers API. So first layer will be bar, and here the y-axis will be total sales, and the second one will be the line, and encoding will be total profit. Yeah, so it is still a multivariate chart, but we have like two different layers for individual measure fields. And so we can also like represent these two layers differently. Like what if I want to keep these two fields separately, let's say in individual array, then it becomes a like a dual axis. So dual axis, like in a chart when two different y fields are present, and each field has their own kind of distinct layer. That's when we're calling we're calling it dual axis. So in dual axis, we can show multiple layers for different measure fields. And so yeah, so we can also apply color encoding. Like let's say I want to have a color encoding for this layer to maybe segment. Yeah, I think for this one, like obviously, so for a segment on this first layer, it applies the color. And let's say I want to have a different color for this layer, then I can also give different field. Yeah, so it will be better to like, maybe we can just use a simple field that will be for better to just apply the color. Let's say total sales, segment, and let's use single layer. And as we are using same field for segment, let's use different field here. Right. So it is stacked, column chart. Now we can also change the stack type of obviously. Like let's say we can use transform and use type group. So so by just changing the transform type, we have just like shifted from stacked bar chart to group bar chart. So this is a kind of a advantage of using Muse API, that it is very composable, and it's very like easy to change from some from different form to different another form, just by changing simple API thing. And now let's see if we use multiple measure on a same axis. Let's say total sales and total profit. And let's not use group. Let's also remove the color and use a different layer. But now what we'll do is we'll like group these two fields in a single axis. Yeah. So Muse, we are getting this Muse from this Vase object, and inside Muse there are a lot of operator, and one of the operator is share. Share operator, what will do is like it will merge two measure fields in a single axis, and it will just show in a single one. So let's say we have a two measure field, and we want to merge it in a single axis, but for for individual measure field, I want to have a layer. And so if I run this, obviously there will be no distinction, but there are two bar layers. So what we'll do is we'll add some encoding, like opacity encoding or size encoding maybe. Let's use size encoding for this one. Let's make this total sales as 0 point, let's say maybe 5, and total profit as, let's use opacity for this one. 0.9. I think let's show up this profile. I think it will be better. Yeah, so yeah, it's something like bullet chart. Maybe it depends on the data, that like if you use different field like total sales and maybe projected sales, that way we can have a like better bullet chart. But it will create a bullet chart by superimposing two measure field on top of each other, and then applying size encoding and opacity encoding. So yeah, now, so this is kind of some basic things in Muse API. And let's talk about formatters and other new things that we have added. So for that one, let's use different fields for rows. Maybe we can use reason and segment for this one. Text. So it will create a simple pivot table. So what we have in rows and columns is, in rows we have reason on the left side, and columns, like in columns we have segment on the bottom side, and in text encoding we have total sales. So individual text cells are just total sales we are showing. Now right now these texts are not formatted, like these are just numbers. But what if we need to like add some kind of formatter, like currency formatter or decimal formatter. So we have API for that. So we'll import those formatter class. Let's say import number formatter. Let's apply currency formatter for this one. I will use currency as a type, and then in currency we'll use USD. So number formatter is a class which will accept kind of styles like currency, decimal, or let's say percent. And for individual style type, it has different types of option. So for currency, let's use currency to USD. And to apply this same formatter, what we have to do is we have to use the same format to do the text encoding. So we have to convert this to an object, and we have a formatter API. And then we are getting the formatter function. Now, if I run this, all the text cells will be formatted to currency with USD as a currency value. I can change it to something else. It will work as it. And yeah, now one more thing is missing is like in tooltip, if you notice that total cells is not formatted. Like it should be synced, right? So for that one, we have to apply the same formatter in tooltip also. So we have config API, and then inside config API, there will be interaction. Field formatters, total cells. Yeah. So these API are all like these API are all documented in the documentation website. So yeah, so we have interaction API in Muse, and as tooltip is part of kind of interaction. So inside tooltip we have a field formatters for individual field. We can have multiple types of formatter. So for the same field, I have applied the same currency formatter, and then yeah, so all the text cells and tooltip are all synced. Uh, Now we have another kind of formatter, which is date formatter. So for date formatter, what we can do is we can maybe convert this chart to bar chart and use total sales in rows. So yeah, just by switching rows and changing mark to bar, it will create a bar chart. That's all. Now the thing is like, what if we want to have a date formatter? So first let's use a date field. Let's in x-axis, instead of segment, we can use date field, and we have to import the date formatter, obviously. Date formatter. So in date formatter, actually, it is an option it will accept, and it has this format property. So inside this format property, we have to use some kind of token to format. Let's say for month, we'll use and D, and then let's say YYY. So these are predefined token which are documented in the documentation website. So it will format it to month and then day, and then it will show the year. So what we have to do is we have to attach this formatter to the axis, which is x-axis. So inside config we have x-axis. As we are formatting ticks, so we have a tick formatter, and we can just call this formatter function. One minute, I think we have missed something. Yeah. So the cart name is tick format. So what we'll do is like it will pick individual tick value and then format those tick values to the like formatter string that we have supplied. Like maybe if you want to just show the year, we can just change the format to year, and then it will show the year formatter. So this is some examples of new formatter API that we have added. And one of the API that we have added, which is null value replacement. Let's say I have a field called region with null, which has null value, and let's remove this formatter as it is not needed. Yeah. Now, what if we want to replace this null string to something else? So what we have to do is we have to import this function set global options. So set global option is a function which will which will help you to set lot of global things which can like change the behavior of the whole chart. And one of the thing is like which is changing the like null value replacement. Like let's say for this one we have to use display as inside display as we want to have invariant value as maybe something like this one. So it will use that replacement. And inside displays also, like we can also rename a field name to something else. Let's say total sales, we can rename to something else, and that API is also available in display. So these are some new features, new API that we have added, and all the exhaustive API are available in the read docs in website or documentation website. But yeah, for this session, I think these are the things.
I know this session was very insightful and you got to learn about Muse Studio charts and how these charts actually work. Also, you got to know about APIs for number and date formatting. And if you want more such videos, let me know in the comments below which next video should I come up with. For more such amazing videos, make sure you subscribe to ThoughtSpot channel and see you in another one.